those songs. Second song in particular, I think it was was that Brooklyn Tabernacle? Was that in the Brooklyn Tabernacle in New York? I'm not quite sure if it was or not, but just some great songs there. I thought for a minute there, I thought I might have even seen John Langland's clapping his hands. I don't know, but maybe. All things are possible, God said with him. All things are possible, so you never know what's going to happen. Listen, great to be with you. I'm just going to dive right in tonight, and I think it's been a great theme already. Just a great theme on the gospel, and what could be better than the gospel? The gospel, the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. Fantastic. That's kind of my theme. We were thinking this morning at Carrubbers, just where we are, right smack in the middle of High Street. The festival is coming. We're praying into that opportunity that God's going to give us again this year, and just really thinking about it's not only the festival during the summer when we're thinking about the gospel. We should be gospel people all the time. The gospel should saturate us, and I know you're with that. The gospel should be something that we live for God's glory. It should be something that we're just constantly ready to engage with in our world. But particularly for us, the world is coming to us, and we're wanting to be ready for that. We're wanting to be motivated for that. We're wanting to be sharp for that. And so we're going to think a little bit about the gospel tonight. So this is going to be a really practical this is just going to be a really practical walk through a very familiar passage, but I'm going to try and pull out just a whole bunch of different gospel principles, mainly just gospel conversation principles, just as we all think about living for Christ and making the most of the time because the days are evil. Just every opportunity that God might give us. It could be somebody calling us on the phone. It could be somebody in the supermarket. It could be somebody on the street. It could be a relative. It could be whatever. Just making the most of the gospel opportunities that God gives us. So we're in John 4, John's Gospel, chapter 4, very familiar passage, but I hope to maybe just take it from a little bit of a different, hopefully not an unbiblical slant, but maybe a different slant than maybe we usually look at. But John chapter 4, let me read the passage. I'm sure we all know it, but let me just get it fresh in our heads, and then we're just going to dive into it. Okay, so John 4, and remember now, John 4, and John's writing John is writing a story for us here. He's capturing the story of Christ's ministry years for a purpose, and his purpose, he tells us at the end of the gospel, is that we might know that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of living God, and that by believing we might have life in his name. So that's where John's going with all of this. By believing we'll have life in his name. Believing we'll have life in his name. And so it's just really all gospel content. And in chapter 4, he's coming off the back now of Jesus's encounter with Nicodemus, the Pharisee. All right, and so you've got this highly respected, very religious, kind of top of the social ladder kind of encounter that Jesus has with this, I would say, this seeking Pharisee. And then watch what happens now. Okay, so you get the top of the ladder now. Watch what happens now. Chapter 4, John chapter 4. Now, Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John. Although, in fact, it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. And so he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now, he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. And the Samaritan woman came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. He told her, go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. The woman said, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. All right, well, that is some story, some encounter. I mean, I'd have loved to have been there. I'm sure you would as well, just to see this particular encounter, but just to see how Jesus deals with people. One of the things that really intrigues me more and more, I mean, I want to learn from the master, right? I mean, I want to learn from the master. And I hope all of us, likewise, we would just say, I want to learn from the master. You know, you want to learn from the master baker, you want to learn from the master butcher, you want to learn from the master evangelist, Jesus. And so we're just going to have a look at this passage tonight, just really briefly. I only have 10 points. All right, so we're going to rifle our way through 10 different observations here. All right, what's happening here and what has just happened with Nicodemus is that Jesus is digging deep into somebody's heart. It's what he does. It's what the Spirit of God does. He's digging deep into somebody's heart. And what an incredible example we have here of a great gospel conversation. This is just a great gospel conversation. Did you notice how John gives us one gospel conversation with a guy who's on the top end of the righteousness scale, Nicodemus, and now another gospel conversation with a woman who is on the extreme other end of the scale? Did you notice that? John is, I mean, this is not coincidence. John is just showing us God's mercy is wide. God's mercy is deep. The gospel is for everyone, for everyone. All right, so let's talk about, in an effort to sharpen us up, right? Let's make the most of every opportunity. Guys, folks, ladies, gentlemen, we never outgrow this, do we? We never outgrow our responsibility to be here for Christ. We never outgrow it. It's not, you don't retire from this. This is just for life, gospel opportunities. And so real quick now, let me just give you 10 quick observations here to refresh us a little bit here when it comes to gospel conversations. I don't know what your summer's going to look like. I know that for us in the middle of Edinburgh, we're going to have loads of opportunities. And so we just want to be refreshed and ready to go. Okay, so 10 quick observations. Number one, in this example, from this example, number one, always be ready. Always be ready for a gospel conversation. Is that not fair? Always be ready. for a gospel conversation because you never know when one is going to come. Yes? No, you never know when one is going to come. I don't know when I go to catch the bus if I'm going to have a gospel opportunity. I don't know when I go to buy my groceries or buy a coffee if I'm going to have a gospel opportunity. I don't know when I go across the street, chat with a neighbor, if I'm going to have a gospel opportunity. Is that fair or not fair? Right? We need to be ready. They're going to come. We don't know when they're going to come. 1 Peter 3:15, sanctify Christ in your heart. Peter says, always being ready. Always be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you. So that's kind of the idea, I think, as we get started here. Did you notice here in this passage, did you notice that this whole thing doesn't seem to ever have been planned? It doesn't seem to have ever have been planned, at least not on a human level. When you look at this, Jesus is not sitting around with his disciples developing strategies for reaching women at wells, right? They haven't just gotten off he's just not come away from the board teaching them about how we're going to reach women at wells. In fact, it doesn't even seem to be on the radar as they leave Judea. Jesus is just moving on. That's the way John presents this to us. Jesus is just moving on because evidently he doesn't want to have to hassle with the Pharisees over who's baptizing who. That's the context. And so all this, listen, think about this, because I think this happens to us all the time. All of this is a change of circumstance. That's all it is. It's a change of circumstance that opens the door for an incredible opportunity for the gospel. And isn't that often how it works? Isn't that often how it works? Something we're not expecting, a change of circumstance. I'm not expecting to have my gallbladder out and have be in the hospital for 2 days or whatever. But I did at one point in time, and I'm sitting there in the bed and a gospel opportunity with a doctor who operated on me and a whole bunch of students that came around. Crazy. That's just one example. It's just a change of circumstance that opens the door for an opportunity for the gospel. God just shakes things up in our lives. We're not expecting it. He just shakes things up in our lives. And before you know it, somebody's getting saved or somebody's hearing the gospel. All right. So that's just the first thing, right? Always be ready for a gospel conversation. Number 2, never restrict God's gospel generosity. Never restrict God's gospel generosity. And let me tell you what I mean by this. The text says here, notice this, really interesting. The text says here that Jesus had to go through Samaria. Did you see that? Did you see that? Where are we here? Verse 4. Now, he had to go through Samaria. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read things like that, I'd think, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What is John saying? He had to go through Samaria, right? And that can't mean that there were no other options. Can't mean there were no other options because the Jews regularly went around Samaria. Did they? They regularly went around Samaria, not through it. They hated the Samaritans because the Samaritans had interbred with Gentiles over the years, and that was anathema. That was unclean. So they just avoided them completely. And so now here Jesus comes with the message of eternal life. And guess what? John says he has to go through Samaria. Isn't that good? He has to go through Samaria. He has to tell people about eternal life. He has to. Yeah, I wonder if that characterizes you. I wonder if that characterizes me. I have to tell people about Jesus. I just have to. Even if it's a bit, even if it's going to take me somewhere I don't normally go, I have to tell people about Jesus. And I wonder if Jesus, I don't wonder, for sure, Jesus knew in the back of his mind, even though every other Jew went around Samaria, there was somebody there in Samaria this day that needed to hear the gospel. And so he was going through. He wasn't going to go around. Wouldn't it be great if that's what we were like when we think of our neighbors or our friends or whatever, I have to tell this person about Jesus. Lord, open the door. I have to tell them. But what else matters? What else matters? But telling them about Jesus. You notice that even the woman here is shocked that Jesus is talking to her. Did you notice that? She's even shocked because Jews didn't talk to Samaritans and men didn't talk to women. But Jesus blows both of these cultural absurdities right out of the box. And I'm not saying anything that it's bad to share the gospel just with your own kind. Sometimes, doctors share with doctors, pilots share with pilots, whatever. But some of the best gospel conversations I've ever had have been with the most unlikely people. They've been with the most unlikely people. And you just never know whose heart God is touching. All right. So never restrict God's gospel generosity because, boy, he's generous. So let's not be stingy with the gospel. Number 3, third observation. It's always great, I find, when we're going to have a gospel conversation with somebody, it's always great if we can level the playing field. You know what I mean by that? It's always great as Christians. Think about this. As Christians, it's always great when we can level the playing field when we're sharing the gospel. Do you see what Jesus does here with this woman? Do you see what he does? The first thing he does. What is the first thing Jesus says? Look at the text. What's the first thing he does? First thing he says. He asks her for a drink. You see that? Verse 7. He asks her for a drink, almost as though he's putting himself at her disposal. You see it? Almost as though he's putting himself at hers. He's not lording it over her. He doesn't go in saying, listen, lady, I've got what you need. Now, fair enough. That's true. He's got what she needs. I think sometimes as Christians, that's what we do. We just think, you know what? You better listen to me because I got what you need. And you better, you better take it because you need it. Now, that's fair enough. I'm not quite sure that's the best way to start a conversation. Jesus doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. He almost puts himself at her disposal. And maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal to you on the surface, but this would have shocked the daylights out of this woman. It would have shocked. It does. What do you do? Immediately. Why are you talking to me? You're at verse 9. You're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman, she says, and you're asking me for a drink? Now, John is saying something there. She's shocked. She's shocked. He's putting himself at her. He's leveling the playing field. He's leveling the playing field. It's almost as though like he's given her the upper hand to start with, where Jesus says, you know what? You have something that I would like. A drink of water. It's hot. It's noon, middle of the day. I'm thirsty. I'm tired. You have something. Would you please share that with me? Jesus does that with this woman. And I'm so convicted by this because I so often go in with a heavy hand or, I've got what you need and you need to follow me and all that kind of a thing. But how totally undemeaning this was for this woman. We go in as Christians in sometimes I think very arrogantly. We have to be very careful. But you know what happens when you level the playing field? When you level the playing field, it's called positive tolerance. It's called positive tolerance. I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but it's the acknowledgement. Positive tolerance is the acknowledgement that everybody has an equal right to their own beliefs. Everybody has an equal right to their own beliefs. I can't force anybody to believe anything. Everyone has an equal right to their own beliefs. It's only that doesn't mean that everyone's own beliefs are equally right. You see the difference? Everyone has an equal right to their own beliefs, but that doesn't mean that everyone's own beliefs are equally right. That's positive tolerance. And that's how I need to go into my gospel conversations. I think it's how Jesus goes into this conversation. Give me something to drink. Number 4, fourth observation here, right? I would say, as soon as you can, level the playing field. But I think as soon as we can, whether we move into a new neighborhood or we meet a new friend or we don't shove it down people's throats, but I think as soon as we can, we nail our colors to the mast. I think it's a good idea as soon as we can to just let people know who we are. Let them know what we're about. Let them know where we're coming from. Let them know what matters to us. Maybe you ask them for their story and then you tell them yours. Maybe it's in a coffee shop. Maybe it's at a coffee morning. Maybe it's at a, whatever, a club or whatever. It's just as soon as we can, getting our colors on the mast. You know what this does? I find if we get this up front, not that we don't build bridges, not that we don't take time, but I do think it's important. We just don't know how long the days are going to be or how long somebody's going to have. Get the colors up there on a mast. I think when we do that early on, that usually gives a really good indication if our gospel conversation is ever going to go any further. Rather than just talking about the weather forever, it gives a good indication as whether our gospel conversation is going to go much further. You just drop Jesus into a conversation. Have you ever done that? Have you ever done that? You just drop Jesus into a conversation with somebody, and you usually find out pretty quick whether or not they're interested. Is that fair? You know what I mean by just drop Jesus, and not as a swear word or whatever. Drop them into a conversation as a person. And it's really interesting how we usually find out where people are at. I remember traveling to Romania. Some of you know Bob Espy. If you come to Carrubbers before, you've met Bob Espy, and Bob's had a lot to do with folks over in Romania. And a few years ago, we were traveling to Romania for a summer camp, and we flew through Brussels and then on into Romania. And we stopped in Brussels. We were in the airport around lunchtime. We got some lunch, and the gal who was waiting on us, we got going with a conversation with her. And we shared a bit. We were going to a camp in Romania to tell people about Jesus. Oh my goodness. She was really interested. She wasn't a Christian, but she was really, and we gave her some leaflets to hold on to. I mean, we were only there for a few minutes. We had to catch our next plane. Really interesting. That was something else. Drop Jesus into the conversation. Boom. We had a great, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes with this gal. Got on the plane, and Bob's in the window. I'm in the middle, and this young guy, this foreign accent, is sitting next to me in the aisle. And so, as we do, we got talking. We're going to Romania to this Bible camp in Romania. This guy was Polish. I think he was a Polish businessman. Going to Romania. We're gonna be at this camp up in the mountains, beautiful camp, telling people about Jesus. Guy just turned to me. He said, right, he said, one thing you just need to know right here. We're not going to talk about Jesus. It's just like that. We're not going to talk about Jesus. Right? All right. Okay. We didn't talk about Jesus, but, we went fishing. There was nothing on the line. Fine. So, and it's just a very, very, very interesting. Jesus says here, look at this. Jesus is here. Will you give me a drink? And the woman says, you're a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? And then Jesus drops a bomb. He drops a bomb. Do you see it? He says, if you only knew who it was that asked you for a drink, you'd have asked him and he would give you living water. You see that? Very interesting. This is evangelism Jesus style. This is Jesus evangelizing this lost, hurting, messed up woman. You'd have asked me and I'd have given you living water. Bang! And he's into the living water. He's right into the living water. There's no time to waste. He's going through Samaria, through the other side, never see this woman again. Never see this woman again. He's right into the living water. Why would I ever want to hide the fact that I'm a Christian? Why would I ever want to hide the fact that I'm a Christian? Okay, number 5, fifth observation here, principle, whatever. Be prepared when you're going to be having gospel conversations. Be prepared to be misunderstood. Fair? Be prepared to be misunderstood. Jesus lays the living water on the line here to this woman, right? He tells her about living water. If you only knew who it was, he tells her about living water. And what happens? Look at it. What happens? Goes right over her head. Goes right over her head, doesn't it? She doesn't say, whoa, wait a minute. She doesn't say, are you talking about my soul? Could you be talking about eternal life? Is this spiritual? She doesn't get it. She doesn't get it. First go around, she doesn't get it. Goes right over her head. She says to Jesus, you don't even have a bucket. Right? You don't even have a bucket. She says in verse 11, where are you going to get water from? Right? One of the things that becomes crystal clear, I think, when you start sharing the gospel with people is how massive the misconceptions are out there about Jesus. Is that not right? You start talking about Jesus, how massive the misconceptions are. And maybe in our gospel conversation, guys, all we'll ever do is clear up misconceptions. That's fine. I'd rather people reject the Jesus that they know than reject the Jesus they don't know. I'd rather, if they're going to reject Christ, they reject the right Christ rather than them being confused. And I can do something about it to help them clarify the issue. The misconceptions are massive about Jesus, about Christianity, about church, about the Bible. They're massive, aren't they? I'm sure you know this. They're massive. And so we need to be ready, like Peter says, to give a defense for the hope that's in us with gentleness and with reverence. That's what Jesus is doing with this woman. He's being gentle with her. Okay, he calls a spade, but he's being gentle with her and he's being reverent toward her. And he just works with this woman and he works with this woman and he works with this woman. He just loves her to bits. But be prepared to be misunderstood. She misunderstood him. Number 6, we need to, I think, and you've heard this before, but I think we need to try and make people thirsty. I think we need to try and make people spiritually thirsty. Don't just talk about the weather. That's not gonna, just going to be, you talk about the weather in Scotland, it's going to make people miserable, not thirsty, right? We need to make people thirsty. Isn't it amazing that this whole thing here in John 4 with this woman, isn't it amazing that it's revolving around the subject of what? What's the subject here? It's water, isn't it? It's water. The subject here is water. The whole thing's revolving around. It's really interesting. That's just all the whole start of this deal. It's just all revolving around water. Verse 13, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. Whoever drinks of the water that I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And just because the woman doesn't get it here at the start doesn't mean that Jesus gives up. He doesn't. He just keeps drawing her. He keeps drawing her in to make her thirsty so that he can then show her that he's the bucket. How are you going to get this water? She says, you don't have a bucket. Jesus keeps drawing her in so he can just show her that he's the bucket that holds the water, isn't he? It's just ingenious here. So much to learn from the master here as you look what Jesus does. Okay, number 7. You say, how are you on number 7 already, Wayne? You know, that's I told you we were going to go fast. All right, we're on number 7. Number 7, make people thirsty. Number 7, because they have to see their need. People have to see their need. If I would assume your testimony, all of our testimonies involve somebody bringing us to a point where we knew that we had a need. We had a spiritual need, a real deep need, or maybe we know we have the need, but they helped us maybe put a finger a little bit more on what the need really is. That it's not more money, it's not it's not more stuff, it's not more education, it's not more status. It's a spiritual need of the heart. It's a hunger of the heart. It's a hunger of the heart, and just helping people to see that the issue really is a hunger of the heart. That's why you're miserable. That's why nothing is satisfying you in this life. There's always something more. You always want more. This is why, because you're trying to fill the bucket with the wrong stuff. So we need to help them see the need. It's the bad news, I guess. It's the bad news that makes the good news good. So helping people see their need is the bad news. The hard news that makes the good news good. Paul says everybody has sinned and falls short of God's glory. And listen, for this woman, everybody sinned and falls short of God's glory. For this woman, right? What could be shorter than 5 husbands? Everybody's falling short of God. What could be shorter than 5 husbands? And I don't mean that she had 5 husbands that were short, right? That's not what we're talking about here, right? But there were 5 of them, and that is short. That is so short. The woman's need was so great. She'd had 5 husbands. Just this is the place where she is. And then there's another one now that she's living with isn't even her husband. The woman has got a relational train wreck on her hands. And Jesus doesn't shove it in her face. He doesn't shove that in her face. Interesting. Do you see where he goes about it? He doesn't say to her, you idiot, you've blown it. He doesn't do that. He just calls a spade a spade. He just points out the reality that her life is barren. Her life is barren. What she's obviously it seems to me, she's trying to fill the hole with husbands. She's trying to fill her relational spiritual gap with husbands. And we may try something else. People try all kinds of different things, right? Our heart, it's been said, is an idol factory. We just, we can worship so many other things than God. And she's just trying to fill that with husbands. And Jesus just points that out. He just points it out, what her need is. And he does it. It just does in a very, I think, just a very gentle way. It could be a whole lot harsher, but you could accuse her of any number of things. But he basically just says, go, listen, I want to talk to you about something really important. So you go and you get your husband and you bring him back here. Now, of course, Jesus knows everything. He knows that she doesn't have a husband. She's been married to 5 guys, and the guy she's with now is not her husband. But boy, does that hit the mark for this woman. And he loves her right the way through it. He loves her right the way through it. Okay? Falling short of the glory of God. However, number eight, no one is ever too short to be beyond the reach of God's grace. We all fall short, but never so short. We all fall short. That neighbor you're going to talk to, that we all fall short, but never so short that we're beyond the reach of God's grace. Listen, the well of God's grace is deep, isn't it? It's deep. It's deep. They're talking about water and wells here. They're talking about water and wells. The well of God's grace is deep. It's deep, right? Have you ever touched the bottom of God's grace? The well of God's grace? Has your life ever touched the bottom of the well of God's grace? Have you ever reached the point where you were looking for more grace from God, but he didn't have any more to give you? Have you? I doubt it. I doubt it. Because there is no bottom. There is no bottom to God's grace. Listen, is this not why we call the gospel good news? Is this not why we call it good news? No matter how far short we've fallen from God's glory, we've never fallen beyond the reach of his grace. No one. No one. It's good news. It's good news. Even if you're a promiscuous Samaritan woman, Jesus invites her to be saved. He invites her to God's grace, and it doesn't get any better than that. Jesus doesn't walk away. He doesn't walk away from the train wreck of people's lives. He doesn't walk away. He's not the Pharisee or the priest who walks on the other side of the road around the Samaritan who's fallen on hard times. He doesn't do. Isn't it interesting how Samaritans feature, how these despised people feature? My goodness, let us never be so arrogant that we think that we're better than anybody. Because, boy, Jesus shows us what's what. Okay, number 9 in gospel conversations. Number 9, knowing that there'll be resistance. There usually is. Knowing there'll be resistance, we need to be prepared to destroy as many barriers to the gospel as we can. We need to be prepared to destroy as many barriers to the gospel in people's minds. This is where, this is where a few coffees help. You're not going to get it all at once. The guy that led me to Christ didn't get it all at once. He didn't, it was over the course of an entire semester of meeting with me and talking with me and reasoning with me and asking me questions and listening to my answers and opening the Bible to me and throwing truth my way. All this. It's just not going to happen all at once. And everybody who feels that conviction of sin is going to throw up barriers. I'm not letting you in here. They're going to throw up barriers. We need to be prepared to throw up barriers. Do you notice to break down barriers? Do you notice what the woman throws up here is a barrier in this story? Do you notice? Look at the text. You notice what she throws up here is a barrier to Jesus. She throws this whole deal up about mountains. Do you notice? Did you see that? Right after end of verse 17, Jesus, boom, he lays it on the line. You're right. You don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands. And the one you're with now is not your husband. So what you've said to me is quite true. Well, you're a prophet. Wow, she says, boy, you've got some insight, doesn't she? Boy, you've got some insight. My goodness. She says, are you a prophet? I perceive that I can see that you're a prophet. You know what you're talking about. You can see stuff in my life that nobody else can see. Are you somebody special? I mean, rather than just saying, tell me more, she throws this deal in about mountains. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain. You Jews claim the place to worship on your mountain in Jerusalem. Where you read this and you think, where'd that come from? It just looks so out of place to me. It looks so out of place. There may be other ways to look at this, but I think the woman's throwing up a barrier. Whoa, because Jesus is just he's just gone right through to her soul. He knows everything he's demonstrated, he knows everything about her. And she comes up with this deal about mountains. We worship on this mountain, you worship on that mountain. We can't figure this out. There's no real answer. All roads lead to the same thing. Whatever. It's that kind of a thing. This whole deal about what mountain to worship on and what mountain not to worship on, because that's what it was like between Samaritans and Jews. Here, our verse 20, our ancestors worshipped on this mountain. You guys claim it's that mountain. And in a sense, Jesus, he never answers that. He never deals. In a sense, he says, listen, lady, forget about mountains. Did you see what he does? Forget about mountains. He said, I love it. Forget about mountains. Yes, he says, salvation is from the Jews. It is from the Jews. Mount Jerusalem. It is from the Jews. But it's not exclusively for the Jews. It is from the Jews. But it's not exclusively for the Jews. So don't look at us Jews necessarily as being the know-it-alls or the have-it-alls. Salvation does come from the Jews. Messiah does come from the Jews, but it's not only for the Jews. What a way to win this woman's heart. The time's coming now and is when true worshipers are going to worship the Father in spirit and in truth, because they're the kind of people God's looking for. He's not looking for you to worship on this mountain or that mountain or this way or that way. Or, there's a lot of, you go around the churches, you guys know this. You go around the churches, there isn't just one way. There's one way to God, but there's not just one way to worship. Hank, take us to Jamaica, man, and show us the deal, right? I mean, we've got some Africans coming. I think you got a few folks from Africa in your fellowship there. You're going to tell these people at some point, go ahead, go for it. Get John Langland's up there with them. Go for it. Get the tambourines out. I'm getting a few thumbs up there. Good. Right? I mean, but we just say, you know what I mean? We get in this, and I'm not saying burst the bounds everywhere. That's not the point I'm making. I'm just saying it's really interesting. The Father's looking for people who are going to worship in spirit and truth. You want to bang a tambourine, bang a tambourine. You want to keep quiet, keep quiet. I mean, you can't probably do them at the same time, but you can do them in different circumstances. I think this is really, really interesting. It's very powerful. It's very powerful. Get rid of those barriers. Get rid of those barriers and turn to God with an open heart. Get rid of the barriers, he says to this lady. Turn to God with an open heart. Let's forget about mountains. Let's forget about differences. It's about God. And it's about who I am. And we're going to get there just in a minute now. Okay. So final observation, right to the end. Number 10, always help people see the urgency of the gospel. So at the end of the day, we've got to get them thirsty, break down the barriers, but they need to see, you need to think about this. You need to think about this because, man, life is life not going fast, guys? Is life not going fast? My goodness. Life is passing fast. We all have our stories. We all say, I can't believe it's another year. I can't believe this. I can't, Sarah and I just yesterday, 33 years married. We went back to the place in Haddington, the Waterside Bistro. We had our first date. I don't know if you've ever been there, the Waterside Bistro in Haddington. We had our first date there and we went back last night and we're sitting there, we're thinking 33 years. Some of you guys are beyond that. I just announced this morning at Carrubbers, and we all clapped for my mother and father-in-law, who on Thursday celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary. So 60 years. Some of you might be beyond that. I don't know. But boy, it's going fast, isn't it? Boy, it's going fast. And I just think somehow we have to help people see that. It's going fast. Just zero room for procrastination. You can't procrastinate over your soul. You can't procrastinate over your soul. You don't have to wait for anything else. You don't have to wait until you're old. You don't have to wait till you're rich. You don't have to wait till you're perfect. We're never going to be. We're never going to be. We just have to know that Jesus has come and that he's died for us and he's risen from the dead and one day he's coming back. That's what we have to know. Verse 25, the woman said, I know Messiah is coming. And when he comes, he'll explain everything. Can you imagine what Jesus, there must be a little wry smile that there must be a little smile on his face when this woman says to him, we know Messiah is coming, right? And there's Jesus. So he's standing there. He's the Messiah. We know Messiah is coming, she says. And when he comes, he'll explain everything to us. You think, he's there, and what do you think he's doing? He's there, and he's explaining everything to her. Right there. And what does he say? What is his response to the woman? Essentially, what's his response? His response is, it's me. It's me. I'm here. I'm here. Don't wait. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Don't hesitate. I'm here. I'm here. So I would imagine we're all here on one page with Jesus, but maybe we're not. I don't know. I don't know everybody, but if we've never put our faith and trust in Christ, don't wait. It's now. It's now. So what a wonderful story. What a wonderful encounter John records for us here. I just think that's the tip of the iceberg. We go back through this and probably pick out another 10. But just some things to think about as we consider our place in God's plan when it comes to being ambassadors for Christ in gospel conversations. So anyway, great. Thanks for putting up with those 10 points. You can now say you sat through a 10-point sermon from Sutton. They probably ask you want to know how many weeks that took, but we did it all in one night. Let me pray, and then I'll hand back over to you, Hank. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you, Jesus, for your love exhibited for us and unpacked for us here in this incredible story with this woman. And Lord, we all have our own incredible stories. And we thank you for meeting us where we are, being gentle with us, but telling us the truth. You've been gentle, but you've not lied. You've not held back, because the only hope that we have is the gospel. It's the power of God for salvation. Help us, Lord, to live it, and help us to share it in every opportunity and chance that we get. Lord, thank you for your precious word. Bless us as we finish up our time tonight in Christ's name. Amen.